Alright, hey, shalom, akim, shalom. First and foremost, as always, before we get started, giving all praise, honor, and glory unto our power, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, the elders of Great Millstone that have taught us His truth and that rule well. And peace and blessings go out to the hopeful members of the elect, scattered throughout the four winds of the earth, that are in the hopes of receiving salvation or mercy during the time of Jacob's trouble, and that are worshiping the Heavenly Father in sincerity, in spirit, and in truth. Alright? Now in this lesson I want to talk about the outcome that is coming from this blockade within the Strait of Hormuz, and talk about how not only is it affecting the U.S. economy within the world of logistics, and ultimately that's going to pan out into the whole process of inflating the price of everything. But when you look at the beast system, in particular the nations that are a part of NATO and the EU, in terms of the European countries, alright, a lot of those nations are catching a lot of hell, alright. As this video that you see queued up on the screen is entitled, it says, Iran, another war likely lost, dated March 4th of 2026, alright. And pretty much in this lesson, this economist Richard D. Wolff gives his insight and concerns of how these European countries are being negatively affected by this Strait of Hormuz being blocked. All right. When it comes down to countries like Germany, the UK, a lot of those countries rely upon imports of oil. All right. And one of the main ports that they get their oil from is from that strait. Okay. So because of that strait being blocked, those countries are facing a lot of hyperinflation right now. All right. And that's something that you don't see within a lot of these news broadcasts, And on top of that, when it comes to Trump being asked certain questions about that strait in terms of what it's causing within the economy, never does he get any questions concerning what the European countries are experiencing, man. All right. So with that being said, Lord willing, this is an edifying lesson. The main point that I really want to touch on is edifying upon the point of how these nations, which like I said are a part of the beast system, the 7 heads and the 10 horns, and pursuant to Daniel the 2nd chapter, the 10 toes that are part clay and part iron, are going to ultimately come to the conclusion of rising up against America and destroying, along with turning their back against this great whore, man. Alright, so with that being said, the first thing that I actually want to do is get Revelation the 17th chapter. Alright, and just build upon that idea that I just explained. Alright, and more so let the scriptures talk, because everything that we see happening right now, man, is biblical prophecy. Alright, no matter how you want to look at it, no matter how these economists want to break it down, all this is centered around the prophecies found within the Bible. Alright? So this is Revelation 17, and I'll start at 15. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, and nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Alright, and again, when you go into the understanding of what these 10 horns are all about, going back to the Roman Empire, they're the set vassal states that would give their power and their set, breadbasket, for the lack of a better term, to a higher government for some kind of protection. Alright, and again, when you go into the history of the Roman Empire, the vassal states that were giving their power to the Roman Empire were facing a lot of strict regulations, all right? So much so that a lot of them ended up revolting. And it's the same thing that we see happening within America, where a lot of these countries that are founded in NATO and the EU, like, Belgium, France, Italy, Greece, Germany, England, along with Spain, all right? You just had the president of Spain kick out the ambassador of Israel out of Spain, all right? But a lot of these countries are now having that same spirit within them to, ditch the whore and now get buddy-buddy with other countries that are going to help them alleviate the set hell that they're undergoing in their country, all right? Verse 17, it says, For the Most High has put in their hearts to fulfill His will and to agree. Okay, so this is the time that we're living in, man, where a lot of these countries are being put in that ancient spirit to hate America, to hate the Roman Empire, all right? And to now rise up against this wicked tyrant and start attacking them, okay? Now, of course, we still have a lot of prophecy to play out in terms of the hour of temptation, the fulfillment of the mark of the beast, but this is all putting the ducks in unison, so to speak, to fulfill the third woe being accomplished, all right? So before we keep reading, I want to play this video from this economist that kind of explains how, these European countries that are found within that peninsula are being affected, all right? So let's listen up.
Natural gas. In much of the world, energy is provided not by oil, but by a different resource. Natural gas brought up from under the surface of the planet and then compressed and cooled so it can become a liquid form of that gas. It's called liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The price of that over the last couple of days has gone up, get ready folks, by 30 to 35% around the world. Why? Because it turns out that a lot of that gas, that LNG form of it, passes through the Straits of Hormuz, which are an area that the Iranians can make unpassable for ships. The way the Houthis have been doing for 2 or 3 years already, and the Iranians are better at it, better equipped, much more numerous, much stronger. Natural gas going up 30 to 35% will have the following consequence. It will make the cost of natural gas everywhere, including in the United States, where large parts of our country heat their homes with it, run their factories with it, produce electricity with it. All of that will become more expensive. But you know who suffers the most? Europe. They depend utterly. And they've been terribly impacted economically. Germany is in the middle of a recession, and Germany was the powerhouse economy of all of Europe. All of Europe is growing much slower than the United States, which means even more slow relative to China and India, who outgrow Europe and outgrow the United States almost by equal measure. But the United States is ahead of Europe. It's one of the things you hear Mr. Trump say, because he can't say much about the troubled economy of the United States. He has to go about cherry-picking his statistics in an extraordinary way.
Right, and when you look at the media, like I said earlier, you never see Trump talking about how these European countries are catching hell. All you have is this fluff talk where he's propagating a narrative of how, we're winning this war in the Middle East. The Iranians can't stand a chance against us. But when you look at the statistics and you take a step back, the U.S. is losing this war by a very long shot, man. All right? The news just came out that almost $11.3 billion were wasted in this war. Shit, if it was probably a lot more than that, man. And contrary to the Iranians, they've, probably used a good amount of like $2-3 billion, but you can see who's losing. All right? It doesn't take you to be some kind of neuroscientist to see the reality of what's happening, man. All right? But this is the devil at work, pursuant to Psalms, the 55th chapter. All right? Let's actually get that real quick. All right? Psalms 55 and 21. All right? It says, "The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords." All right? And this is the reality of what's happening, man. All right? So let's let him keep talking, because there's a point that I want that he later expounds on.
But Europe has no escape. One of the reasons Europe is in such trouble is they decided that they would, the Europeans now, punish Russia for invading Ukraine by refusing to buy Russian oil and gas. That meant all the European users of oil and gas had to buy it and find it from somewhere else, usually much further away than Russia, which is part of Europe. And so the price of energy went up, and therefore the price of everything else in Europe went up, and therefore the rest of the world, including Europeans, stopped buying the European product because the price had been raised too high. And now the U.S. war in Iran is going to make the cost of energy in Europe even higher than its already crippling level had been because of the Ukraine war. Europe is in a long-term decline. The United States is at the beginning. They lost their empires a century before we now are losing ours. They don't have wiggle room. They don't have the ability to go with this new punch in the gut. And that's what Mr. Trump has delivered to them. On top of the tariffs, on top of the disrespect that is the number one topic of conversation among honest Europeans over the last year. This will worsen the collapse of the American-European alliance. It will disrupt this rising price of oil and gas. The longer this war lasts, the more these impacts will flow. This is a disaster. And you should wonder, you, my American audience, more than those of you that are not here in the United States, virtually no real honest discussion. Mr. Trump couldn't do it because it would create such doubt, such questioning, such scratching of their heads. Why do this if we're not under threat? What? Why risk all of this? He can't answer those questions. That's why he didn't bring it before us, the American people. That's why he didn't bring it before Congress, the people we elect, who under the U.S. Constitution are supposed to make the decision whether or not to go to war, because it is so dangerous, because it is so risky, and because it's risky for all of us, not just the handful who made the fateful decision. Iran.
So yeah, man, that's pretty much the point. I'll let the rest of the video play out because he does make another good point. Alright, but again, as the media isn't showing you any of this information, and as Trump is continuing to bully these vassal states like Spain, these little countries within NATO and the EU, alright, a lot of them are looking for other partners that are going to help them out. A good example is Turkey. You know, a nation that once upon a time was a part of NATO, but look whose side he's on now. You know? So, call Allah Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shaiman, because this is all nothing more but furthering the process of America being destroyed and having Yahweh Shai come back and deliver us out of this captivity that we're in right now, man. Alright, so from here, let's go to the book of Daniel 2 and 33. Alright? Matter of fact, let's start at 32. This image's head was of fine gold, talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the image that he saw. Alright, the fine gold represents the Neo-Babylonian Empire. His breasts and his arms of silver, talking about the Medo-Persian Empire. His belly and his thighs of brass, which is representative of the Greek Empire. His legs of iron, talking about the Roman Empire. His feet part of iron and part of clay. Alright, so like I said earlier, man, within the Roman Empire, you see a glimpse of what we see happening right now because America is Rome. Alright, only in the process of it being reincarnated pursuant to Revelation, the 13th chapter, of the deadly wound being healed. All right. So from here, let's go to the interpretation of Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. All right, and let's hit the 40th verse. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. All right. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And we see the division happening within this war, man. All right. Again, when it comes to this war, Trump and America in itself didn't get any kind of advisement of Congress. All right. When it comes to declaring war, there's a process that the president has to go through in order to have that validation to do what he wanted to do. Okay? But Trump didn't do none of that, man. All right? And on top of that, he didn't negotiate with the nations in NATO. Okay? So this is all doing nothing more but brewing a spirit within these NATO nations to be pissed off against America, man. All right? And pursuant to Jeremiah the 50th chapter, it speaks about how the mother of Babylon shall hate her. All right? Which the mother of Babylon, aka America, is Europe. Where did America come from? Europe. Okay? So let's get that real quick. In Jeremiah 50 or 51. Yep, Jeremiah 50, and we'll go straight to the point at verse 12. Yep. It says, Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. All right? And this is what we see happening via America, man. All right? Europe, along with those nations within that region, are pissed the hell off and are ashamed at how America is getting down. You know, here it is. All these nations within NATO are kin. You know, they're all Edomites, only from a different region. All right? But here it is, the head Edomite, Esau, within America, of course, along with Amalek, all right, the chief house of Edom, is completely disregarding his kinfolk. All right? So it shows you the idea of how wicked Esau is and how, what's the word I'm looking for, man? How, not docile, but how messy he is. All for the sake of him being like the Most High. Real quick, this is Sirach 14 and 5. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his own goods. Alright, so if Esau isn't, if he's doing his people like this, imagine what he has in store for all you people that believe in this system, man. Alright? Y'all are in for a very, very rude awakening. And a part of that rude awakening is happening right now. Within this whole, economic struggle that you're very soon about to experience. Okay? Now, real quick, I had this scripture up in Sirach 34 and 21, and it says, The bread of the needy is their life. All right? He that defraudeth him thereof is a man of blood. And this is what Esau is doing to those countries, man. Like Richard D. Wolf had made mention, right now Germany is in the middle of a recession. All right? So to add salt to their wounds, what did Trump just do? He cut off their supply line of oil. So what do you think's going to happen in that country, man? They're going to catch holy hell. All right? And again, this is all something that isn't being reported. Okay? But through us, just thinking in the spirit and seeing how all this unravels, Germany is going to get pissed the fuck off at America, man. All right? Verse 22, He that taketh away his neighbor's living slayeth him, and he that defraudeth the laborer of his hire is a bloodshedder. All right? So this is something that's going to continue to escalate, man. All right? Again, we just started this whole, blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. All right? As we've been paying attention to a lot of these economists, they've made the point about how within the next couple months, 2 to 3 months, if this blockade continues to be blocked, things are going to get very hectic for a lot of countries, man. All right? Pursuing the second edge of the 16th chapter, victuals shall be so good cheap that people think that they're in a good estate. But suddenly, that's when all hell is gonna break out loose. Alright? And Lord willing, it happens out here in America, man, because shit. This country needs humbling. It needs it very bad. Alright? So finishing this off, it says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Alright? But they shall not cleave one to another. And that's going into the idea of how these NATO nations would, come together, brainstorm, make this treaty, make that agreement. But in the grand scheme of how they, interact with each other, it's all going to be something that ends up playing within the benefit of America and ultimately oppressing smaller countries that don't have the same power as other countries. All right? Reading this scripture in the NLT, it says, this mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. But they will not hold together, just as iron and clay do not mix. Alright? Right, so from here I want to go to the chat, and I simply asked it to give me the breakdown of Daniel 2 and 33, which we just, broke down. But it gives us some good intel concerning history and, just giving those other little more bits of information that kind of bring the full point home. Alright? But the main point that I want to grab is from the second little bullet point where it speaks about the feet, which is where the iron mixed with clay is. And it says, the feet of iron and clay represent the last phase of this Roman system, which GMS identifies as the modern Western power structure, particularly NATO nations, the European Union, America and its allies. Alright? These powers are seen as the revived Roman Empire. Scripturally, this links to Daniel 2 and 41 through 43, where the kingdom is partly strong and partly broken. Alright? What the iron represents in the feet. The iron and feet symbolizes the remaining Roman power structure, which includes strong military systems, imperial political structures, and global dominance. GMS often identifies modern America as a major continuation of Roman power. Alright? America inherited many Roman traits: Senate-style government, military imperialism, and global dominance, cultural influence. Alright? What the clay represents, and this is the point. Alright? The clay represents weakness and division within this final empire. And this is what we see happening right now that's escalating. Alright? Number 1, it says mixed people / unstable society. Multicultural societies, different nations forced into alliances. Alright? Weak political unity. Nations that don't truly trust each other. And right now, you can bet your bottom dollar that a lot of those nations within NATO and the EU do not trust America whatsoever. Alright? It says social instability. And a good example of that is the comment that Trump made against Spain. Alright? Within that whole war that's still happening, alright, Trump had asked Spain if they could use their military base to set up, their armory so that they can have, a base that's closer to the Middle East, and Spain proudly declined it. Alright? And what was Trump's response? In essence, he said, oh, okay, you're going to decline us, well, we're going to decline you. We're going to put tariffs on you. Matter of fact, if we want to set up our base, we just going to do it. This shows the unruly spirit that America is in right now, and as he continues to depict this to these nations like Spain, which is a part of the Seven Heads, alright, a major player in the game, things are going to continue to escalate. Alright? Reading on, it says social instability, political division, cultural conflict, and moral decay. Alright? It says GMS interprets this as nations and peoples mixing together but never truly becoming unified. Alright? Number 5, it says why the statue ends at the feet. Now, for the sake of just time, we're just going to get the simple terms of what this prophecy expounds on. It says legs of iron equals ancient Rome, feet of iron and clay, modern revived Roman system, plus America and Western powers. Weak mixture equals political division, unstable alliances, and mixed populations. Alright? And the next event is going to be Yahushua returning and destroying this system. And this is the set patience that the saints have right now, man. Alright? Again, as we continue to see this war escalate, and things continue to get out of hand where, America continues to attack Iran or Iran continues to attack America, it's going to put these nations within that, region that are a part of NATO and the EU to ultimately pick a side. All right? It's either picking America, who's going to continue to abuse them and use them for nothing more but their own, enterprise, or pick the enemy side that may be a some kind of tyrant, but it's not as bad as America. All right? So with that, I want to end off here in Revelation, the 17th chapter, and from here we'll just play the rest of the video. And I highly recommend you watch the whole thing, because this dude, he makes a lot of good points. All right? So back in Revelation 17 and 16, and the 10 horns, NATO in the EU, all right, which going into the 7 heads, it first started off with the Roman Empire. I'm sorry, not the Roman Empire, the Greeks, then the Roman Empire. Then you had Germania Major, Germania Minor, Spain, France, and Britain. All right, and then from there, that's where the vassal states would come in, where you would have the Franks, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Alemanni, the Visigoths, the Burgundians, the Lombardies, the Anglo-Saxons, the Suebi, and the Heruli. All right, now when you do your own homework and you see, how these nations would uprise against the Roman Empire, you can see the same parallels, man. All right, which those 10 horns now are Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Greece, Spain and Portugal, England and Ireland, and West Germany. All right? All these nations share the same symptoms as to what these ancient names were going through. All right? And guess what? They're going to give off the same answer, but instead of, fighting with the sword, they're going to fight with missiles. All right? Which is going to fulfill the latter portion of this prophecy of America being burned with fire. Alright? It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For the Most High has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. And the word of the Most High is being fulfilled right now. Okay? Again, once upon a time, these nations willingly gave their kingdom to America. Okay? But as they see how things are escalating, they're thinking twice of doing that. Alright? Verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Alright, but very soon this great whore is going to be destroyed, man. Pursuant to the next chapter in Revelation, the 18th chapter, it speaks about Babylon the Great falling. Alright, and that's pretty much what we're waiting for, man. Alright. Again, we're living in a very beautiful time where we see the prophecies of the Lord speaking for themselves damn near. When it comes down to doing these lessons, we don't really got to break it down to the set extremity of going from verse to verse, because it's speaking. So, continue to stay prayed up, Akim. Stay on your watchtower, and let's continue to root. Let's continue to prophesy. All right, because this is the ability and the power of what Yahweh Shai has given us by way of giving us the Comforter. All right, as the Lord has given us the vision, we understand what is to come. All right. So we ain't got nothing to worry about, man. We're not like these other Israelite groups that are building, bunkers, getting land, buying bug out bags. All we have is the Lord, all right? And that's all we need. So with that, as always, Lord willing, you brothers and sisters were edified. As always, giving all praise to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, Peace and blessings unto the elect. Shalom.